I took him to bed to read him a story. Sharon kept on buying him books of ghost stories. He always wanted me to read him those, but he never slept properly after, I think. I always looked carefully to reassure him. I always had to check the room for ghosts before he would settle down. I remember that night clearly. I remember promising him that I would always protect him, no matter whatever happened. Of course, he was thinking of ghosts still, but maybe I knew then that his life wasn't going to be so easy. I was reading Grimm's fairy tales to him. I liked those much more than the new versions that they kept on coming out with back then. There was a short, very strange story that night called The Ungrateful Son. I think it went something like this. Once upon a time, a man and his wife were eating a roast chicken for dinner. When the man saw his father, who was very old, walking up the road towards them, the man didn't want to share, and so he hid the chicken out of sight. His father came, bid them a good day, and went on his way. The man was happy with himself and told his wife to get the chicken and put it on the table again. But the chicken had transformed into a giant toad, which leapt onto the face of the man. The toad would never leave, and when his wife wanted to help, she was so afraid of it that she dared not go near. The man had to feed the toad every day from then on, or it would bite his face, and he never rested for the remainder of his life. Like I say, it was a very strange story. Will was asleep before I finished it, which was probably a good thing. It left me in an odd mood. I wondered how long I would be able to keep him safe. I knew I would do my best to help him find his place in the world. Any other grandmother would try to do the same. I could still see him sleeping there now, like it was only yesterday. I never thought it would be easy, but I had raised James, so I thought I would be ready for anything from my grandson Will. The world changes so quickly. I remember the family visiting me when Will was a teenager. I like to go to the seaside at Brighton. They sell these glass animals there, handmade. I started collecting them years ago, and I still get a new one every time I visit. After James had grown up, I went to New Zealand to visit distant family over there. It was a very long trip in those days, but it's important to keep in touch. We're all so spread apart in our lives now, don't you think? My husband Robert was a writer, like Will. I think they would have loved talking. Maybe Will's interest would have inspired Robert to push a bit harder in his work. Do you know Al Martino's Here in My Heart? He had such a lovely voice. It was playing when Robert first kissed me. Robert would hum it to me sometimes. It was only a matter of time back then before Diana divorced Charles. She'd done that interview, and we all knew it was coming. People seem to believe that all us old folk want to talk about is the weather, so I started the conversation. I see that Diana is in the news again. It seems like she's never out of it these days. It's about time she stopped keeping everyone waiting.
I think it's sad. She was bullied into all of this from the beginning.
The rest of the conversation didn't go well. Will frustrated me so much. Sharon sat there, not saying anything, which was worse than her joining in, but I could imagine her American take on the whole thing. James wasn't much help. He's always held liberal views on things. I wish I'd never even started the conversation. They didn't want to hear my opinion. "Excuse me, I'm going to make some tea," I said. No one offered to help. I felt patronised. I don't think they really wanted tea. I didn't really want it either, but I didn't want to stay in there. It seems like a strange thing to remember, but some things stick with you. James and Sharon both held their own views. I knew that. But Will, it's easier to be different now. But all he could see was the need of one person, at the risk to everything else. I didn't have any choice in my time, but I had a quiet life. It was good enough. I was worried about him, getting all these views. It could get him into trouble. It's not good to stick out like a sore thumb. You have to fit in. I was scared for Will. I didn't want him to stand out and end up worse off. I stood there, waiting for the tea to brew. And I cried for him. He was young, but he was old enough too. He was going to make mistakes, and I wouldn't be able to stop him. I knew something had been broken that day between Will and I. I took a deep breath and pulled myself together. It doesn't help anything to let others see you get upset. I live by myself. I always have done since Robert went. I had felt this was acceptable until then. Feeling distant from your family is the most awful thing. It's the strangest feeling of mourning. I know I'm from a different generation with different values, but I don't think they're all wrong. I wasn't prepared to accept that Will wasn't going to talk to me anymore. His views, I felt he was putting his future at risk. All these free ideas about people choosing their own way to live, he would understand later. But how much later? But before he changed, what damage would he do to his options? I felt uneasy about that Christmas. We would be together all day. I was down in the dumps, to be honest. It was good to keep busy making the place look nice. I remember a Christmas after Will had gone to university, but we were all coming back together for the holiday. It's important to keep in touch with your friends. We didn't have the internet back then. I wish people still wrote letters. I'd been told that Will was going to bring a girlfriend, Sarah. It was important to make a good impression. My family arrived just as the Christmas lunch was ready. It was perfect timing.